Egyptian population still lived under $2 a day. And third, the world has changed around Egypt and around the young generation that's coming into the labor force. It's no longer acceptable to live under authoritarian regime. We've seen the Soviet Union collapse. We've seen a number of democracies rise in a number of countries. And young people are becoming impatient with authoritarian regimes, holding them back, that they cannot join this open, liberated world that they have seen and continue to see on websites, through the press, the media, and through their travel.
Let's go back to the point of unemployment. Let's go back to the point of unemployment. I think that's probably one of the most important ones to look at. Was it recognised as a problem, do you think, by the government before any of what we've seen in the last few weeks? Was it recognised as a real issue that could lead to something worse?
They did. However, they did not do what needed to be done some years back, in fact, to create the conditions for generating employment, especially for the young and the educated. Unemployment in a number of countries, for example, in Tunisia, it's close to 14%, in Egypt, close to 10%. There's huge underemployment in the public service, in a lot of the large public sector corporations. People are not feeling that they are being very productive. At the same time, among the young people, in the ages, for example, 20 to 29, that's when young men come into the market and young women come onto the market. They want to establish their career, they want to start a family, and unemployment among these is something like 60–70%. It's 56% in Tunisia, it's over 70% in Egypt. And that's where the frustrations begins to build among the young, the educated.
Sorry to interrupt you, where is it coming from? Because what you've just described is something which could be described in any number of Middle Eastern country. What is it that the governments or that society or structures across the Middle East aren't getting that is meaning those people in those times of their lives can't get a job?
Well, let's start with Tunisia, which sparked the protests and the uprisings in Egypt and then to a lesser extent in other countries. In Tunisia, in addition to unemployment, especially among the educated, remember the person who immolated himself in protest against conditions in Tunisia was himself a college graduate who could not find a job and ended up selling fruits on the street, and even there he was humiliated and beaten up. This resonates with young people. In addition, the corruption in Tunisia, which had three characteristics. One, it was in high places for the most part. Two, it became very visible through the behavior of the family of Ben Ali. And third, it became predatory. Predatory means that the family members around Ben Ali were actually getting into the way of business development. They were insisting on getting a share of the pie from almost every operating company in Tunisia. That became too offensive to the business community, alienated the business community, and created even worse economic conditions. In Egypt, the corruption had not gotten quite that far, but at high level it is. It is visible among the super rich who live in guarded communities, who fly their own jets and have a lifestyle totally alienating for the rest of the population. There comes a point when young people simply cannot take it anymore.
Any thoughts then on how you would create jobs in the Middle East, how to try to sort this out?
Well, it starts with first political reforms. I think you need to open up the system to allow young people to seek business opportunity through entrepreneurship, small business development, to travel, to learn, to bring foreign skills into the country. You need a more open political system also that rewards the people who work and who produce, and does not reward those who are necessarily connected or powerful or politically influential. Number two, you need to link up with the rest of the world. Many countries in the Middle East, especially the oil countries, but also Egypt and others, have been on the margin of the global manufacturing cycle. Take a look at Mexico, for example, because of NAFTA and the way industry developed in Mexico, or industry developed in Asia, which employed millions and millions of young people with high skills, high wages. The Middle East has been left out of that cycle. It doesn't have very large manufacturing that's competitive. It doesn't produce products that are competitive. It depends on natural resources, on tourism, on remittances from the rich countries, and on, in the case of Egypt, the Suez Canal, and strategic assets that that the country inherited. It has not really generated the kind of industry, high-value industry, high-value products that attracts young and educated people and produces demand for high skills.
Right.
This has not happened.
I wonder if we could just focus down onto Egypt again, but more specifically, what is happening, the violence that is happening now and the effect of that. I mean, I spoke to one of our correspondents there who was saying quite simply you couldn't even go to an ATM, a cash machine, and get any money. The acute effect on Egyptians right now must be huge.
Absolutely. In fact, banks have been shut down since last Wednesday. That's more than a week. The ATM machines were emptied early on. It was the last of the month, as you know, the end of the month on Monday. People usually get paid either the end of the month, the beginning of the month. They were not getting paid. The pensioners did not receive their pensions. And since a large swath of the population in Egypt really lives from day to day, it was a devastating impact on people's lives. Stores ran out of supplies, or the supplies rotted in the stores. There was some looting. There was complete breakdown of the economy. The central bank was not open. In fact, the government could not refinance some of its debt. Everything came to a halt, and this has an immediate impact on the daily lives of people. And this cannot go on for very long. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why perhaps the government, and specifically the armed forces and the intelligence services, may need to move quickly to put things down, or at least to find a way out of the situation. Egypt cannot be shut down for much longer. That's why the Minister of Finance, the new Minister of Finance, the central bank governor has said they will try to open the banks on Sunday. And I think between now and Sunday, something needs to be done to clear the streets to some extent, either through reconciliation or through other means, in order to get the country moving again. However, at the same time, what happened yesterday in terms of violence seems to have provoked a negative reaction across the board, not just in Egypt, but in the Arab world and here in the US. And we understand that the Prime Minister has stated that he will immediately launch an investigation into what happened and hold those who caused this the bloodshed to hold them accountable.
George Abed, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. All right, let's turn now to the issue of exports. Egypt does have a lot to offer the world. In fact, next time you dry your hands on a towel, just check the label to see if it's not Egyptian cotton. Nadine Barber has this report from London on those trying to do business with a country in crisis.
For more than a week, they've been emailing and calling Egypt. Finally, they get through.
Nothing will happen this week.
Nothing will happen this week. OK.
This company in London sells cotton products to places like hotels. A quarter comes from suppliers in Alexandria, and right now, the factory's shut down.
I can't get through to Egypt on the phone. Only mobile phones, guys who actually have their mobiles on them will answer them. And even then, it's like intermittent. No one's open. It seems everyone's just looking at TV, or I don't know what the situation really is. But it is desperate, I think.
The Egyptian cotton that goes into the bedding and the top-of-the-range toweling here is known for its quality, and often hotels won't accept anything else. Of course, any prolonged closure of Egypt's ports is going to have an impact on many other industries as well. The uprising against President Mubarak has closed down not just Egypt's stock market and banking system, but also many shops and factories. That could cause real problems both abroad and locally. In some ways, Egypt's been doing well. GDP grew by more than 5% last year. Its exports in 2009 earned nearly $30 billion, up by over a fifth from the previous year. But 1 in 4 Egyptians is now out of work. If businesses start closing, that figure's sure to rise. The Suez Canal accounts for 8% of the world's seaborne trade. Because it's still open, some experts say the protests will have only a short-term impact.
You're seeing food prices increase dramatically because of the inability to transport items. But at the same time, Egypt is still earning money from the Suez Canal, which has not been affected so far. So it's negatively affecting businesses that are in Egypt for sure. But I would say that this is likely to be a temporary effect.
And whatever happens politically in Egypt, traders around the world are hoping it'll soon be business as usual.
But the problem is damage can be done quickly in the world of business. You heard Nadeem say there, Egyptian banks and stock markets, they were closed during the violence, which always adds the risk of an eventual run on the banks as people run short of cash. But again, it exposes the problems underneath, which brings us to our second analyst this week, Malcolm Gray from Investec. Malcolm, thanks for your time. So much has been put at risk, as we see. But as I say, again, it goes back to the economic conditions beforehand, doesn't it? Things like the absolute basics of life, being able to get cash, food, inflation.
Look, I think economic conditions in Egypt were